guys, it's me Andy, and today I am bringing you a story time. If you're new here, welcome to the channel. My name is Andy. I am a 27-year-old Johannesburg based flight attendant, and I thought I would start introducing story time videos to my channel to tell you guys about my favorite flight memories, challenges, or even just the awkward moments in my life. So today's story time is going to be about my assessment day of flying, which technically was kind of my first day flying. It was kind of a hot mess. Back in 2017, I had just become a flight attendant. The way it works when you're becoming a flight attendant in a company where you have to fly single crew, meaning I flew as the only flight attendant on that aircraft. It was just me and the two pilots in the flight deck and no other flight attendants on board. The way that our training went was we would have to do our theory training and then our practical training, which we would kind of shadow another flight attendant, and then we get assessed by one of the assessing instructors who's like a line trainer basically. And then they are supposed to sign you out, and from then when you are signed out, if you pass your practical training, then you are a qualified flight attendant, and from then on you can do your flights all by yourself. The first week at my job I was doing in-house training, so we were doing theory, we were writing exams, we were doing simulated assessments, and then after I passed that, I went on to do my practical training. So I basically shadowed another flight attendant. When you're flying a single crew, everything is on you. So if you're a single crew, you do all the pre-flight checks, you do all the announcements, you board the passengers, you brief the overwings, you close the overhead stowages, you help passengers with their bags, you communicate with the pilots, you do the demo, you clean up the cabin, you do the service. Guys, you do everything. But honestly, by the end of it, it's like second nature. So that's what I was learning. That's why I was shadowing another cabin crew. So on the first training flight, I was basically helping her. She was still in charge, she was still doing the announcements, she was still doing the boarding of the passengers. I would just be in the aisle helping them put their bags away, and I would be doing maybe the overwing briefings, and I would be briefing mommies with babies and wheelchair passengers while she's doing everything else. By the last training flight, she's no longer allowed to help me. I am doing everything on my own, doing the whole thing that I just explained to you guys is all up to me, because at the end of the day, once I'm signed out, there isn't somebody to back me up. It is just on me. I did my training flights, those seemed to go well. We did experience a delay, I think, here and there, but I kind of got to see how we handle those kinds of things, because remember, it was my very first time working as a flight attendant, so I was just taking in as much as I could. Then came the day of my assessment flight, and with my luck, something goes wrong. Gosh, Andy. The day starts out well. I meet my instructor cabin crew, and we're gonna call her Ashley for the sake of this video. I don't want to just give out people's names for no reason. Ashley was there. She checked if I had all of my required items. She checked if I had my overnight kit, my passport, my cabin crew license, my spare uniform, everything that I need that is necessary to be there. She would check that. But for the most part, she was sitting there quietly assessing me. She was not allowed to help me unless obviously it was like a hectic situation, which we'll get to. But basically she just sat there. She kind of watched us do the briefing because the pilots would brief me. At some point she also would ask me certain like safety and emergency procedures training questions, or aviation medicine questions, or equipment questions, and she kind of just did that here and there throughout the day. And she made sure that I had all of the paperwork that I was supposed to have for the flight, because it was an overboarder flight, so I needed to have general declaration paperwork. I needed to have these like cabin sprays that you're supposed to spray if you're leaving South Africa and if you're coming back into South Africa. We got on the plane, I did all of my pre-flight checks, my equipment checks, and then I was the one who had to call for boarding. Flight departed at about 6 AM and majority of the passengers were fast asleep, so we had a chance for her to ask me questions and for me to ask her questions of things I wasn't certain about. Technically it's basically like 1 or 2 flights that she has to like strictly assess me in, but that day it was 4 flights. So the first 2 flights she was assessing me, and the second 2 flights she was kind of just there as an extra pair of hands, because she had to be there the whole day either way. So yeah. So the third flight comes. We are parked in Johannesburg and we are about to board to go to Lusaka. Ashley is in the aisle helping the passengers put their bags up. I'm boarding passengers, I'm talking to the pilots, you know, everything is hunky-dory. Then I start doing my boarding announcement, which is the one where we tell you that your cabin bags have to be under the seat in front of you or in the overhead stowage. You know, we're giving you information that your phone must be off until we're in the air, you know, that kind of stuff. As I'm about to finish my announcement, I see a passenger kind of scurrying over to me, this little old lady, and I'm like, oh, I wonder if everything's okay, maybe she forgot something in the airport. And she comes up to me and she waits for me to finish my announcement, and I put my PA down, and then she goes, there's somebody that's sick. And I'm like, oh no. Now keep in mind, guys, I at that point had never ever in my life assisted in a medical emergency of any kind. And it's one of the things that was constantly on my mind during my ab initio training was, how on earth am I going to handle this? Especially if we're at 30,000 feet, like who's gonna help me? How will I know what to do? You know, like training helps us and we know on paper what to do, you know, and if we're being assessed, we know what to do. But once it happens in real life, am I actually gonna know how to handle the situation when it is just me in there? So anyway, back to the story. This lady tells me that somebody is sick. I have a split second to freak out about it, and then instantly I go into flight attendant mode, and I turn around because where my PA is, where I'm boarding the passengers, is right in front of the flight deck. So I'm like, kill two birds with one stone. Let me quickly just tell the pilots that we have a sick passenger. I'm gonna go check it out and I'll be back to let them know what's happening. I go over to the passenger. It's about, I think the man must have been in his late 30s, and his eyes were rolling back. He had lost consciousness. His entire body was shaking uncontrollably. And I was like, oh my word, what is happening? Then I quickly realized he was having some sort of an epileptic fit. So I was just supporting his head, and I was trying to just like hold on to him and just like keep him in a certain position, because that aircraft is so small, you can't just, you know, there's not like a ton of space to just like stretch out, you know. So I was trying to just like hold on to him, make sure that he doesn't harm himself in any way. And then once his fit started to subside, I started to like try to communicate with him and ask him like, hey, tell me your name, so that I could see his responsiveness. So eventually he gained consciousness. By this point, Ashley had noticed what was going on. She had come up to me, she was asking me about everything, all the information I had at that point, and then she scurried off to get some moist towels to help the man, and she was also communicating with the pilot. So I carry on with this man. Luckily he was traveling with somebody right next to him on the other side of the aisle. He was traveling with another man, and so this man was giving me a bit more information, and after like 30 seconds to a minute he became fully responsive again. He felt normal again, and you could tell that he just like wasn't sure what had just happened. So I was just trying to calm him down, you know. And at the same time, what always seems to happen during a medical emergency, other passengers are just standing there like staring at you, and they're like all trying to get closer and closer. So I'm like trying to calmly tell them, please back up, take up your seat, you know. I just this isn't like fun and games right now, like please just have a seat. By the time that he was talking back to me and, you know, feeling better, Ashley was coming back to me with the moist towel, and the captain was also with her. And then at the end of the day, if you're flying single crew, it's up to you if you feel comfortable taking a passenger with you or not. And at that point I honestly didn't feel comfortable. What I've realized since that day is that what happens on the ground is bound to be about 10 times worse when you're in the air. And we were lucky enough to still be on the ground. We were lucky enough that paramedics were 5 minutes away. We were lucky enough that if anything happened and if you really needed immediate medical attention, it was there. It wasn't, we weren't still in the sky, we didn't still have to descend, we didn't still have to like figure all that stuff out. We were already on the ground. So I felt like it would be better to get him medical attention right then and there, instead of risking it and continuing on with the flight if I wasn't sure if he was going to be okay or not. Ashley kind of just let me say everything, but then as soon as I said no, I don't feel comfortable with him, she was like, thank goodness, I fully support that. I also don't feel comfortable taking him. And at that point she kind of asserted herself as the senior on board, and she was like, thank you for actually saying that, because at the end of the day it is your flight, but I'm more senior and I completely agree with you. We are not taking this man on our flight. So yeah, The captain went and called paramedics, and they came over to the aircraft and they took the man to a hospital. Luckily, the man that was sitting next to him did say that they were only going to Lusaka for a business meeting and they would be back the very next day, so he was able to continue and do the meeting and then come back and fetch him from the hospital the next day. So we felt a little bit better knowing that. But yeah, it was, guys, that day, knowing that it was my very first flight, it was an extremely stressful situation for me to be in. Since that day, I honestly feel better, and I am forever grateful that I was able to experience that on my first day. I don't know if that makes sense, but having it that day when somebody was there to be able to kind of validate my reaction to the situation and the actions I took to kind of sort that situation out. I'm glad that it happened that day, because since then I've had other medical emergencies on board as a single cabin crew member, and I was so much calmer. Since then, I've just been able to be much more sure of myself and much more confident in my abilities since then. So I'm very grateful ultimately that I had that experience that day. Medical emergencies on board an aircraft are really no joking matter. It's kind of a very stressful thing, especially for us, because we're the ones responsible for your safety, but we are not doctors. We are not qualified doctors. So if there is a doctor to assist us, that is just amazing. Honestly, we welcome that with open arms. But sometimes, you know, there isn't a doctor to assist, so it's a little bit stressful, but I feel much more confident in my abilities knowing that I had that experience on my very first day. So yeah, guys, that is my very first medical emergency and also my very first day as a flight attendant. Kind of my very first day as a flight attendant. It was my first day where I was responsible for every single flight, so I'll say it's my very first day as a flight attendant. Thank you guys so much for watching that video. If you enjoyed it, please give it a massive thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe if you're new here. There will be more story times coming just for you, so stay tuned. Until then, please continue to spread good vibes and be kind, and I'll see you all on the next video. Bye bye.